Hello, everybody. This is Green Vigilante Media, and my name is Mike Gonzalez. And today we're talking about peace solutions in a wartime economy. And we are here with three important speakers on the topic of peace. First, we have a very strong advocate for peace. Her name is Rachel Brunhke. She has been a candidate for California Assembly for the Green Party, and she is also for Witness for Peace.
Southwest.
Yeah, okay, Witness for Peace Southwest. Rachel, you are involved in the 3rd annual LA Harbor Peace Week. Coming up, it looks like it's happening the 29th, right, of this month?
29th through August 29th through September 3rd.
Excellent. And so you guys have events lined up for, it looks like, for 5 days. Can you go ahead and tell us what this is about?
Yeah, so the origins are, we've been doing this 3 years, and I'm pretty proud because 3 years ago, the U.S. military brought Fleet Week to our LA commercial harbor. And right away, I saw it in the newspaper and I thought, you know what, ya basta, enough. About 5-6 years ago, they put a battleship right in our harbor permanently. It's called the USS Iowa. Sure, it fought in World War II. Sure, it fought fascism. I'm all for fighting fascism. But then what people don't realize is that battleship was recommissioned during the Reagan Wars, and it was used to patrol the waters off Central and South America, and we all know what Reagan did in those days. So that is like a sore, you know, an eyesore for me in the harbor. And then the gall of the U.S. military on top of this, because it's become like a party recruiting central down there on the waterfront with the USS Iowa. And then now they brought the Fleet Week. And we are one of 8 cities around the country that have Fleet Weeks. So right away I said, no, this isn't going to happen. Not in my town that I was born and raised in. And so we started Peace Week. And it's been growing every year. And I have to say that they have 5 or 6 days of war activities, and we have 5 or 6 days of peace activities. We're going to have open mic and spoken word. We're going to have an art build. We're going to have a candlelight vigil. We're going to have speakers down in front of the Iowa. We're going to have a memorial to the victims of war, including U.S. soldiers. We're also going to meet the people on the streets on Friday night. It's Friday night is August 31st. And San Pedro throws a big party for the military, and you know, the soldiers come off the ships. And I have to say, what Fleet Week is they bring all branches of the military. They bring the Army and the Marines and the Navy and the Air Force and everything, and Apache helicopters, and there's flyovers. I mean, it's ridiculous. They militarize the harbor, and they have big tanks out there, and parents actually bring their children to enjoy this day. And we're sitting there last year, you know, with our peace signs and everything in front of this activities. And parents were putting their own kids on tanks and, you know, smiling and taking pictures. It was just, you know, it was really sad. And so we're out there. And the Friday of Fleet Week, which we call Peace Week, we're going to be out there when they bring the sailors onto the streets and everyone's having a party. And we're going to be distributing literature about the topic of tonight, about the peace economy, and that we cannot be supporting a continuous war economy, $717 billion now. And it's kind of interesting because with Trump, people are maybe starting to say, hey, that military budget's too big. So I think we have to strike while the iron's hot and really get this message out. So I thank you very much, Mike, and the rest of you on tonight for bringing this issue up. So that's Peace Week. Come on down. Rodolfo, you're going to be here with us. And we're just inviting everybody from the area and outside the area to come.
Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity to meet Rodolfo, as a matter of fact.
Yeah,
Rachel, and you know, everybody can comment on these questions, but I'm going to target each one of you individually. But Rachel, it seems to me like the American public is overwhelmed with the idea of war and peace and whether it's moral and whether we should, American foreign policy. I think they're just tuned out. Is it because it's happening in another place, it's too far for people to understand? How do we turn the American public on to the fact that we are in several illegal wars?
I know, that's just, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, the war isn't far away anymore. It's right here on our borders. And so you mentioned I'm with Witness for Peace Southwest. We're a longtime Latin America Solidarity organization, and we're actually doing a delegation down the border in November because trying to make the point, and I'm making the point all the time, that the whole humanitarian border crisis is because of U.S. foreign policy. There wouldn't be an MS-13 if we hadn't formed the Contras and armed Salvadoran militia and mercenaries and given them money and green cards to fight the Sandinistas in the 1980s. And then they came here and they learned how to be gangstas, and then they formed the MS-13. So it's our fault. So every time Jeff Sessions opens his stupid old mouth, I just have to, the truth has to come out. And let me say, when there was the big protests like a month ago, or solidarity rallies across the country, they were so beautiful. The Families Belong Together rallies. I went out there with this message, and I got the megaphone out and really implored anyone my age or older who lived it, who knows what Reagan was and who knows what Reagan did and everything before. We really got to start talking about this. So yes, it's at our borders. It's also, and Mike, you and I, after the horrible shooting in Parkland, we did that really important video that I hope people check out again, is that when we have violent foreign policy, that's violence at home. We're a violent country. We have violent economic system. We have violent political system, don't we? I mean, just the disgusting fights that go on in this country. It's all just aggressive in nature, and it needs to stop. And I really think that people are getting weary of it. And if the objective conditions in our country, what's happening on the ground, gets worse, people are going to start turning away, and we just have to be there with the message that this is why. And our country's crumbling economically. We're spending $717 billion on war next year. It's ridiculous. So
right,
it's not far away. It's going to snap.
Yes. So I see on Friday they're talking about a peace economy, and I thought it was a good opportunity to bring Jake on. So Jake Tonkel is with the Green Party of Santa Clara County. He is also working with a public banking action team for the South Bay Progressive Alliance. Jake, can you tell us how a public bank can help a peace economy or help foster a peace economy in this wartime economy that we function in?
Certainly. So essentially, the new public banking movement has stemmed out of divestment. Divestment came onto the scene with the No Dakota Access Pipeline organizing that happened through the Lakota Sioux tribe, and it grabbed its feet in this environmental movement. And since then, people have started to realize how much of our money is not only in fossil fuel development projects, but in militarism, funding in weapons manufacturing, funding all the branches of the military that use the private capitalist economy in order to extend their reaches out across the globe. So the point of a public bank is in order to allow citizen control of taxpayer dollars. Currently, your taxes held either at a state level or at the municipal level, as low as school board, all of that money gets placed in a bank that has the capital requirements in order to hold it safely. that leaves very few options. Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, the main Wall Street banks that helped us get into financial crises over and over again are the ones that are holding our taxpayer dollars and then holding them ransom. We can shift that paradigm a little bit by establishing that control within our own governance systems so that we can allow for socially responsible investment clauses like divesting from weapons, divesting from fossil fuels as a part of how our city finances are governed. In that way, a lot of this environmental activist movement has shifted itself into this peace economy that we're talking about. We can make strong community investments that are low risk, healthy for the economy, and at the same time then pull our money away from financing foreign wars.
Excellent. And I think evidence shows, and I believe that a lot of the wars are for fossil fuels. So obviously divestment and divesting from the war seems to go hand in hand. Jake, so what about taxes and small businesses or entrepreneurs? Will a public bank help reduce taxes and help businessmen, local businessmen?
Run in the right way, of course. So banking has found itself to be the intersectional action of a lot of our community woes. The ability for us to divest from damaging industries and then reinvest in the community, partnering with credit unions, partnering with community banks, a municipal or a regional public bank can allow for credit extensions to these smaller, more local industries and boost the economy from the ground up. It's more of a grassroots style of finance that, done well, can ensure that small business people, young entrepreneurs, people of color can all have stronger access to this financial sector that has been traditionally held apart from them.
Mm-hmm. Because the credit requirements for the commercial banks are much higher and are harder to get than they could be for a public bank who would be willing to invest in its own community, correct?
Correct. And I guess I forgot to mention that as those funds are returned back to the municipal bank or the regional bank, that the city or whoever is a shareholder in that bank gets a return as well. So rather than what happens now and what's been happening for the last 60 years in this era of privatization is that as city funds get lower and lower, the city must sell off its money-making assets. Its water companies become private, its electric companies become private, its roads become private. However, capitalism can get its hands into society's resources, into our resources that are have the ability to make some sort of profit. They'll do their best to do that and then extract as much profit as possible. Conversely, investing from a municipal standpoint allows us to set lower interest rates, which help the original investment, and then take that money and put it back into the city coffers, so to speak, so that instead of having a larger and larger portion of our yearly tax budget or our yearly city budget go towards paying off interest, whether it's loan interest or bond interest, we start reducing that and making money off of what we need to do to serve our community.
Excellent. And so what do we need to do to get public banks started in California? What's our next step, I guess, or what are we working on?
So as part of the California Public Banking Alliance, the organization is setting up to challenge and overturn some of the small legal hurdles that are involved at the state level. It's a very autonomously focused group trying to do state level legislation to remove kind of silly barriers for a municipal or a regional bank, something like FDIC insurance, for example. Being insured up to $250,000 does not really do a city any good by the time that everything is pulled away, if they're left with 250,000, that's bankruptcy. So there is set rules that are supposed to protect consumers within the private banking market that don't make sense when we pull that money back into the public control. So there's state level work being done, and then in each region of the state now we have some strong grassroots activists that are pushing counties and city councils in order to establish and those public banks at that level. So LA actually has a measure that's coming up on the ballot that will allow for the county, city of LA to change their constitution to ensure that a public bank is legally viable and not violating that constitution. Oakland has a feasibility study that is about to come out, and SF has already put forth a task force. And those are just the cities that are furthest along. The alliance is set up with community partners in, like I mentioned, San Jose, where I'm from, as far north as Humboldt, Santa Rosa, Santa Barbara. There are really a lot of grassroots activists focusing on their local legislators, where we seem to have the most power and we stay furthest away from the monetary influence that is the banking lobby.
Excellent. And then is there like special licensing that they have to get?
The way that we're hoping to instruct the state level legislation, the Department of Business Oversight would issue licenses to the individual banks so that they can evaluate whether the bank has the proper governance structure, whether they have the financial feasibility to make sure that it's a safe investment for the community. They would be the ones issuing that license, yes.
Excellent. Thank you, Jake. Hey, Rodolfo. So Rodolfo is a candidate for California's 40th Congressional District here in California. He made it past the primary and is now in the general election. So this talk is solutions to, or a peace economy, solutions to, the war economy. Rachel's method is activism. Jake is working on public banking, and Rodolfo is running as a candidate that advocates for peace. So Rodolfo, is a peace economy or anti-militarism important in your area, in your congressional district?
So again, I'm running in California's 40th Congressional District. For people that are familiar with the geography of Los Angeles, this is east and southeast Los Angeles. So these are all the way from East LA, all the way down to Bellflower, where I live, and up right below downtown, south of downtown and South Central. So people might know that those areas are some of the most impoverished, polluted areas in the entire United States, certainly in California. And in my campaign, I'm trying to bring forth the question, why are we so polluted? Why are we so impoverished? The question of the pollution in a lot of the district actually comes directly from the military-industrial complex. That's the answer. We have a lot of factories that serve that complex that President Eisenhower, of course, talked about. So this is, of course, the process where Congress votes for more funding for our immense defense infrastructure, which is what he called it. And then, well, what happens? Of course, the Pentagon puts out requests for contracts, and a lot of those factories that put out those contracts, those multinational corporations, they have a lot of subcontractors. And where do those subcontractors go? They go right here to Southeast Los Angeles County. So what we have is a situation where we're manufacturing parts for the fighter jets and parts for the ships, the nuclear ships. And what happens when when that manufacturing happens? Of course, toxins, toxics, all sorts of pollution springs from the factories, particularly in the city of Paramount. And many of these factories, there's dozens upon dozens of them. They get funding directly from the multinational American-based defense contractors like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman. What do these corporations have in common? They donate quite a bit of money to my opponent, who then, of course, in the last, just 2 weeks ago, Lucille Robert Allard, voted for that $717 billion so-called defense budget that Rachel mentioned earlier. And the year before that, she voted for the other, I think it was $696 billion, So this is, of course, all for mainly, it goes to the contractors, it goes to overhead, very little of it, goes to the troops or the veterans. I go out in the streets and I talk, a lot of the people, of course, that are homeless, just as they are around the United States, they're veterans. Some of my most loyal and hardworking supporters, they're veterans, and they're homeless, or they have an extreme difficulty paying for the rent, the medical expenses, etc. So the military-industrial complex is just feeding off of the people. And in this case, really some of the most impoverished people in the United States. So that's profitable, right? So my opponent has essentially, since her very early days in the California State Assembly, she has been essentially has entered this political marriage with the defense contractors. However, unfortunately, of course, what goes with poverty? A lack of perhaps time to really research the issues facing one's own community, the political, sociological issues. So many people in the communities quite simply don't know that this has occurred. They simply vote Democrat because the Democratic Party is supposed to be the party of working people, and certainly in a district like ours, which is the most Chicanx, Latinx, Mexican-American district in the entire United States, at about 90%. It's probably higher than that, though, since the last census. So yeah, we have a situation in this district, in the 40th California, where our Congresswoman, she essentially makes her career from supporting the United States' largest national investment, which is, of course, the Department of Defense. And who suffers as a result? It's the families that are dying. Entire families have died from cancer, from neurological, developmental disorders. In much of the district, again, these factories, not all of them are from the military-industrial complex, but they serve that larger machinery of American industry, certainly the oil companies. So yes, in my campaign, I am really trying to talk about the potential to have an economy of peace, which involves transforming what's left of American manufacturing, which is essentially all military-based, into green energy, green technologies. We could be having good-paying green jobs actually at these same factories if we just simply repurpose them for a good purpose. And we could even incentivize these companies to enact those to transcend, to turn around what they've been doing, which is polluting not just the community, but the entire world, right? The US military is the world's largest polluter. And this is now, we're seeing such a dramatic and negative effect all up and down California with the fires, right? Our ecology is collapsing. And we're really only now, I think people are truly getting the problem. And all of this comes from our insistence on getting more and more resources. In the case of the US military-industrial complex, it's getting the resources from other parts of the world. Of course, that breeds pollution and corruption, etc. So yes, we absolutely need that peacetime economy. And I know that people are ready for it. They're hungry for it, and we can deliver it to them.
I agree. And so do you think there's a difference between the Republican and the Democrats in the military spending?
Yeah.
It
Well,
seems like the Democrats get behind the Republicans' budget every time.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, technically speaking, I suppose there is a difference because last I checked, I can check right now. You know, I think 99% of Republicans voted for the Department of Defense Act, Authorization Act. It looks like only about 80% of Democrats did. So technically,
So 19%.
that's what I think so.
There's
Yes.
a 19% difference.
Yeah. So, you know, we clearly, I mean, there's very strong anti-war, increasing the Department of Defense budget. Democrats, I'll name some, you know, they're, you know, the standard ones like Barbara Lee and Ro Khanna. Pramila Jayapal is really pushing against increasing the military budget. But overwhelmingly, yes, the Democratic Party, really since the time of Truman, has been marching lockstep with the military-industrial complex. Actually, the Republicans didn't actually join them in that effort until a little bit later. The Democratic Party is the party of the atomic bomb, is the party of the establishment of this massive defense infrastructure. That's why a Republican president, Eisenhower, called them out on it. He was very worried about the marriage of congressional Democrats with Lockheed Martin and other major companies. And I think that now I think it's made that speech in '61, so, you know, almost a long time, I mean, several decades later, I think we can really see that those military contractors have essentially bought Congress. They really seem to be determining the direction of how our money is spent. You know, it's always more and more and more, and it goes up by a huge percentage each time. What doesn't go up, right? How much we spend on science, education, healthcare. You know, it doesn't go back to the same extent as this military investment that Congress makes.
And I know that you're a strong advocate for education. Rachel and I had talked once before and talked about how students come into adulthood, into servitude, because they have two options. One is to join the military. The other is to sign away themselves, their credit, to student loan debt, which survives bankruptcy. That happens when, you know, we don't have a good economy, obviously, and they have pretty much those two options. Let me ask you this, Rodolfo, as a candidate. How do you stand on the Middle East conflicts right now, say Israel-Palestine, Syria? I just heard today that we've increased bombing in Afghanistan still. We're longest U.S. war in U.S. history.
Yes. So would you actually mind if I addressed the student loan and military recruitment issue that you just brought up?
Oh, please. Absolutely. Okay.
So it's fascinating, you know, one goes back in one's biography, autobiographical memory. And I, of course, you know, there were efforts to recruit me and my classmates growing up in this area of Los Angeles, in elementary school. You know, it was very explicit. You know, the ROTC always made inroads into our schools. And I remember that in high school, I felt that I visited Congresswoman Lucille Roba Allards, again, my opponent, on her website. I know that I had visited, and there was a section on student resources. But that was a distant memory, but I did recheck it, thankfully, to the wonders of the Internet Archive. She precisely lays out the option that you highlighted. So either you get a bunch of loans to try to pay for your schooling, or you join the military. That's literally what's on her website from 2004, which is the website that I remember looking at. So here, you know, here's my opponent telling extremely low income families, many immigrants like myself, to choose between these two toxic options. The option that I and my parents made for my own life, yes, was the student loan debt. And, you know, now I have several tens of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. So it's of course, you know, I'm not alone in my generation in having made that choice. So those are toxic choices, both of them. What we need is to, one policy that the Green Party is pushing, it's very different from the any Democratic Party proposal that I've seen, is the forgiveness, the entire forgiveness of student loan debt. That literally means that Congress votes to fund the students in the same way that they essentially nationalized the banks in 2008. You know, they decided to make that investment because the banks were deemed too big to fail. Well, I think you know, my generation, the millennial generation, which is locked in debt. You know, we're too big to fail. So that's why we need congressional investment in us. And of course, those millennials that did go over to fight in Afghanistan and Iraq and the wars that we've had since, you know, we need to support those veterans and those troops, and which is not what we're doing. You know, we need help for them when they come back. We need help for their families. We need to get them out of this cycle, though. We need to stop preying on them, which is exactly what my Congresswoman, Lucille Roba Allard, has been doing for 30 years. Check out her website. She suggests this toxic option between either the loans or the military. So sorry, just wanted to address that.
No, that's great. I appreciate that.
Do you mind if I interject briefly? So
Sure.
There is still this interesting dichotomy of, well, we can fund the military or we can fund education, and oftentimes this conversation breeds its way up to the congressional level. How do we reduce student loans? And as a Green Party member myself, don't think of a better economic incentive than, or economic stimulus than forgiving student debt. At the same time, how do we restructure society afterwards to make that choice between student debt and joining the military less viable? And public banking does serve that purpose. The Bank of North Dakota backs student loans specifically. It's one of their few individual investments. They mostly partner with community banks, but they do offer student loans at low interest. And being able to have cities, states, counties back these student loans gives us a whole new financial opportunity to reduce the burden on those that are in the unfortunate situation of having to choose between crippling debt and military service.
Excellent. Thanks, Jake. Hey, Jake, since you just made that comment, let me read something off of the Public Banking Institute, their website. It says, as of spring 2010, North Dakota was also the only state, now North Dakota being the one state that has public banking, North Dakota was also the only state sporting a major budget surplus. It had the lowest unemployment and default rates in the country, and it had the most community banks per capita, suggesting that the president of state-owned banks has not only not hurt, but helped local banks. It says the Bank of North Dakota was founded in 1919 to ensure a dependable supply of affordable credit for its farmers, ranchers, and businesses. I just wanted to read that because that's a great argument and a great point. It touches on many different topics, both conservative and progressive, the benefits of a public bank.
Yeah, there's a very strong understanding that when communities are involved in lending to their neighbors, you get low risk investments and that return comes directly back to you. So rather than betting on some multinational corporation for its stock to change or for it to pay back the loan that it gave to a large private multinational bank, we can start to bet on our students. North Dakota is a great model. They've not done everything perfectly, but from a financial standpoint, they've been very low risk, and it's allowed them to fare very well in the terms of their local economy. What we do have to be careful of is that we as community members are still in charge of our public bank once it's established. The Bank of North Dakota had issues that conflict with a lot of public banking activists where they were funding, I believe they were helping to expand funds for the policemen that had to go down to the Dakota Access Pipeline to protect the company there. So local control is very much a part of how we want to establish the governance of these structures so that we do get that strong community investment.
Excellent. And the thing I don't know, I think we've mentioned but didn't maybe focus on was that it could help student loans as well, as we were talking about with Rodolfo. They could finance student loans.
And the history of public banks has very much been around helping disparaging industries. So like you mentioned, 1919 was mostly focused around improving the agriculture industry. Some of the public banks that don't often get mentioned because we like to look internally at the United States, but Brazil, India, China, they all have different public banking structures, more often at the nationalized level, that help to return money to industries that they need to keep alive, regardless of how they compete on an international market or what the capitalist demand for those supplies are. So we've seen a lot of strong growth in the middle class in India and in China and in Brazil around the success that public banking has had there. So there are a lot of strong examples of its fiscal responsibility to its nation and to its community.
Awesome. Excellent. So Rodolfo, let's get back to the Middle East and your position on, like we said, what's happening in Syria and Afghanistan and the Israeli-Palestine conflict.
Yeah, well, one of the big reasons that I am running, other than the domestic issues that I've brought up, as well as others that people can read on my website, rodolfoforcongress.com, I am indeed running to call for a complete turnaround in U.S. foreign policy. I believe that it's been 100 years, more of the United States meddling in other countries to affect their elections, to exploit their peoples, to extract the resources. These are not morally possible actions in a good moral universe. So I think we should withdraw our empire. I think that if we empower other nations with the tools that they perhaps need for economic development, for education, and that of course should be based on true humanitarian aid rather than capitalist exploitation, I think we can truly empower them to to overcome our negative influence, because that's what we've done to the world. I mean, we followed the British Empire and so many empires before, and really trying to control as much of the world as we can. But now we're seeing that we essentially can't. Right? The other nations are fighting very hard to resist our influence, and I can't blame them. What we're doing all around the world is not okay. We should not be facilitating genocide in Yemen. We should not be overthrowing democratically elected governments unless we truly do believe that clear evidence shows some moral ethical problems on the part of the government. But notice how say we claim, or at least our intelligence services claim, of course they're oftentimes wrong, that say Assad in Syria, maybe gassed his own people. Then there were various reports from even MIT professors disputing the evidence, just based on very factual physics, chemistry-driven arguments. So we need to be very skeptical of all of these intelligence agencies that say this and that we should invade this country or the next, and that they have weapons of mass destruction. For the most part, that's always turned out to be false, right? We went into to Vietnam on false pretenses. We went into Iraq on false pretenses, and we now know that these were lies told to us by, again, the military-industrial complex, which of course includes our intelligence infrastructure, the CIA, NSA, the FBI. So these are institutions that are running amok. They're ruining various other societies, and again, including our own, because the way that the military-industrial complex keeps on going is that it employs more and more of the population. Eisenhower, even already by the time of Eisenhower, in his speech, he says that between, I think, 3 to 4 million people are directly involved in the defense establishment, meaning manufacturing the nuclear weapons, ships, fighter jets. This is big business. We allowed it to become big business rather than, investing in the kind of industrial things that we actually desire in a society, like solar panels or other ways to get energy. So we've allowed that complex to spiral out of control. It now controls our economy, essentially, since so many people are directly employed by it. And that's the difficulty, that the intelligence, the military, the Pentagon function to keep propping up this system of capitalism, which enriches, of course, just a few, such as the CEOs and their, the people next in line at the defense contractors. And this is, so then the model, the economic model here that is involved is continual expansion of the US military abroad, and of course, continued exploitation of peoples around the world and here at home, like in Congressional District 40, all for the services of that dollar, those profits. So my orientation towards foreign policy, which of course, the U.S. Congress, when a woman U.S. representative has limited ability to influence, but at the very least, we can provide a very strong voice. So on that U.S. House floor, if I were given the privilege to serve, yes, I would oppose essentially every intervention that is either being planned right now by the CIA and others. And I would call for an immediate withdrawal of the empire. We have to start acknowledging what it is. Not just the United States of America, we have an empire that stretches way farther than the British Empire ever did. It's just that we don't formally recognize it on a map, but it's there. Just think about all the places where our military is. We essentially control those lands, and you draw it out. You have an empire. You have an American empire, and it's not good for us or the world. It's only good for a few people that sit back and collect paychecks from the Department of Defense, the military contractors.
Hey, Mike, can I interject here?
Sure.
Yeah, so something Rodolfo brought up, he talked about sustainable development and what we need as an alternative. And I wrote an article several years ago. I've been going for about 20 years to Cuba. I've been working with that for a long time. And the article was Cuba's alternative to war is sustainable development. So, sometimes, like, I'm a vegetarian, and sometimes people don't understand. They say, what do you eat? And I say, everything but meat. If we're talking about what's the peace economy, it's like, well, everything but war. There's all these amazing, beautiful human endeavors that we can be engaged in, and people just cannot wrap their mind around that. If you don't have a big steak on a plate, you must not be eating. And it's like there's abundance of amazing things out there. I'm a high school teacher. I teach young people, and let me tell you, their hands just fly up when I talk about amazing opportunities to save our planet, to save our community, to save our our fellow human beings and creatures. They're so excited about that kind of a world. And that's everything but war. And so what we do is as an environmentalist myself, and a lot of you probably have heard of the concept of just transition. Well, just transition is usually talking about transitioning our economy from the fossil fuel economy into the renewable economy and the efficient economy and the conservation of energy economy. Well, you know, we need just transition out of the war economy, because the truth is, like Rodolfo says, is that there are millions of people who get their livelihoods from this. And, you know, it's hard to get a man to admit to something when his paycheck is making him not understand it. You know, I think it was Eugene Debs said that you can't understand a possibility of another way if your salary comes from this one way. So at the same time that, you know, definitely people involved in this, you know, need some accountability. We need to say that it's not the man, it's the mission. And so people need to understand, look, if you live on Navy housing, we don't want you to be homeless. You know, we're the good guys. We don't want people to be out of jobs. We don't want people to not have a life's purpose. These young people who come in, they think they're doing a good thing and a noble thing by rescuing people. You know, we just need to shift that. And a lot of times I tell these young people, I say, you know, be a man, build a windmill. And right now in California, it's like, be a man, go fight fires. There's a lot of things that can be done with this energy, you know, that sometimes people get into the military for. Obviously, it is mostly economic reasons, and that's just double tragic. People don't even want to be involved. Something about the student debt, Rodolfo. I was up north. I have family in Humboldt. I have my nephew is in community college, and he told me a nightmare story. I couldn't believe it. Is that he went to 1 year of community college. He got loans for it, and so he was able to go to college. And he went to go sign up, you know, for the second year. And they said, well, you know, FYI, that first year was pretty much paid for by the U.S. military. If you want to continue in college, you have to sign on the dotted line and basically join the reserves, or you have to give that money that we gave you year one back. So my long-haired hippie, Humboldt, darling, peace-loving nephew signed on the dotted line because he didn't have $10,000. And I said, you know what? Have you ever heard of the movie Hair? It just reminded me, Mike, you know, you probably remember that. It's just, he was just dragged into something he didn't want to be dragged into. And so there's a lot of people, a lot of families who are fed up with this. Also, at the Peace Week, we're working with a great organization called Military Families Speak Out. As a matter of fact, on the Saturday of Peace Week, I'm looking on dates, on the Saturday of Peace Week, it's September 1st, there's going to be a peace flotilla. There's going to be kayaks and dinghies and the mothership, and they're all going to go up the channel of the LA harbor, right under the nose of the USS Iowa. And they're going to have peace signs and peace flags, and we're going to be videoing. And so come on out to that. The Military Families Speak Out is, you know, just really tired of using their children as fodder, you know, like Jake has been talking about for this capitalist system. And people, Americans are just, they're tired. They're tired of being afraid. They're tired of being stressed. They're tired of being, you know, afraid for their own safety, both physically and economically. And we just need to kind of get the word out more and more. And just to kind of end, a Cuban friend of mine said something to me which just has stuck with me forever. He says, you know, the irony is, he says, there's no people with more friends in the world than the American people. He says, but there's no government in the world with more enemies than the American government. Our government, our U.S. foreign policy does not speak for me, does not speak for us. We're good people, and we're not represented in the world as who we are. And we better watch it, because it's going to come back to us. I mean, you know, 9/11 was just the beginning of the blowback. We did not respond to that in the way that was going to help anything, obviously, and it's just going to get worse. So I really think that these, you know, Democrats, even, you know, unknowingly, or red state America, Trump voters, they really need to understand that they're voting against their own self-interest. And I can say one thing as an urban farmer, and I'll end with this, as someone who grows food in the city, I have a real kind of love and respect and curiosity about rural America, about people who really grow food, our food. And they don't understand that all these years they've been voting for our government to go kill other farmers around the world. We've been killing mostly rural people. And you know, we cannot complain about treatment at home if we're doing that same thing to people around the world. So it's just complete ignorance, and we have to get out there into these communities and you know, start teaching this stuff.
Right. Jake, I think you have to go here at 8, right?
Yeah, I do have something.
Let me give you an opportunity to go ahead and state any websites or organizations you want to plug.
Great. So the Statewide Alliance is the website that you should look into in order to be plugged in with your local group and get involved in public banking. That's CaliforniaPublicBankingAlliance.org. As well, you can visit southbaypa.org, which is the website for the South Bay Progressive Alliance. If you live in my area, which is Silicon Valley, Palo Alto, San Jose, anything really below San Francisco and Oakland. Those are 2 good resources to get plugged into local activism, as well as the Santa Clara County Green Party. We're very strongly involved in a lot of the local action around climate change, around anti-war, and around this public banking finance system change. There's a lot of overlap from a lot of our strong green activists. So please check out the Santa Clara County Green Party page as well.
Excellent. And then is there a way you could maybe help, I don't know, Rachel, if it's possible to maybe get a public banking speaker at the Friday event, since it's about a peaceful economy. Maybe you and Jake could collaborate to get somebody over there and have a role for public banking.
Yeah, very good idea. And Jake, just real quick, I was telling Mike earlier, is I'm on the local neighborhood council here in San Pedro, and at a local neighborhood community level, we voted unanimously on our board to support the LA Public Bank. And not only did we vote unanimously, it was like almost like a no-brainer. It was a very interesting moment. Just everyone thought, great idea. Just like you said, everyone thought, wait a second. Yeah, our money should be used for our neighbors, our fellow Angelinos, and everyone just kind of relaxed and went for it.
Excellent.
Yeah, we'd love to have a
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. So we can connect over email, and I will see if I can get somebody to come out, because I do think that would be very valuable.
Wonderful.
Again, I want to, Mike, thank you for setting this up. Rachel, Rodolfo, it's great getting to talk to you guys. So take care. Good luck in what you guys are working on. We need to definitely implement this peace economy quickly. Take care, guys. I'll talk to you.
Thanks, Jake.
Yay.
Bye.
Good job, Rick.
So, hey, Rodolfo, are you going up to Rachel's event?
Yes, I'm excited.
He's speaking.
Oh, okay, excellent, great. What day are you speaking?
That we have not settled yet.
Oh, you haven't set that up yet, okay.
Maybe Saturday night, Rodolfo.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Maybe we could get somebody to video it. That'd be great.
All right.
And what do you think of public banking, Rodolfo? Is that something you think you could get behind?
Yes. So it's how I've seen the issue framed for the most part. It's been framed mostly as a local, municipal, or state level issue. So me running for a federal office, I haven't had the time to dive into all the details involved, but I think from what I've learned and just now, from Jake's efforts, I think it is something that we should absolutely support. Yeah, but of course, at the federal level, it's just it's a different kind of monetary.
Right.
But it all has to work in concert so that we can deliver greater democracy and economic relief for the people.
Right. So Rachel, do you have a website you want to tell people they can find your event and the agenda that's happening? Because it's happening over 5 days, is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's 5 or 6 days. And we don't have a website, but we have a Facebook, and it's LA Harbor Peace Week 2018. Yeah.
Okay, LA Harbor Peace Week 2018 on
2018. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And right, yeah.
On Facebook.
Yep, on Facebook.
Excellent.
Can I say one thing also? I'm glad I looked at the flyer one. On Friday, we, besides promoting the peace economy at the big fiesta they have for war, is that it's going to be, we're collaborating with, and I'm a member of, San Pedro Neighbors for Peace and Justice. It's been a group around since the beginning of the Iraq War. Medea Benjamin kind of helped catalyze these kind of small groups around the country. By the way, she's going to be here in Culver City on Sunday at the Peace Center if any of you in LA are watching and want to go see her 4 to 6. But the San Pedro Neighbors for Peace and Justice has been doing a weekly vigil on the corner of First Street and Gaffey in San Pedro, and it will be their 785th vigil. They have not missed a Friday in 785 Fridays.
Amazing.
Which is both beautiful and
tragic at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, but come on out for that, and we're hoping for a big show that night.
Excellent, excellent. And how about you, Rodolfo? So Green Party candidates are corporate free. We are funded only by the donations that people, voters, are willing to give us. What websites can we find you on and then help your campaign with, and any other organizations or causes you're involved in?
Sure. So people can check out more about me on my website for sure. That's Rodolfo, RODOLFOFOR, Congress.com. So there's a link to my donation page as well as my volunteer sign up page. People should see it right there on the top right. So people can also text the word Rodolfo, the number, then my name, to number 41411, and then you will get automatic updates about our campaign.
Oh, excellent.
That's, yes. So our campaign, we are in fact grassroots. We don't obviously take any corporate money. That's antithetical to what we're about. So in supporting our campaign, a lot of people have found that, wow, this is an interesting, great opportunity, actually. So what I always tell people who maybe are a little bit on the fence about, putting in their small dollars, is that this is an entirely winnable campaign. My opponent has actually never faced a real challenger campaign. She's been in office for 30 years representing the area. And before that, it was her father. Together, they've represented essentially the same area, congressional district, for 55 years.
Wow.
Now, people may say, well, that's evidence that, voters like them. But what we're seeing, and volunteers keep telling me this, and I see it myself with the voters I talk to, is that people are shocked and very pleased to hear that there's actually someone that they can vote for, rather than just the default, well, she's the Democrat, vote for her. And that's also another thing for people watching nationwide. So yes, in California we have the top 2. So thankfully that means there's no Republicans in the general election for Congressional District 4. There's no such thing as the spoiler effect that people talk about. This is a campaign that is truly the most progressive in the race. The other person claims to be a progressive, is on the progressive caucus of the US Congress, but that is no longer meaningful. Half of those people on that caucus are taking money from the military industrial complex corporations. So that's what we have to stand up against. So well, if we were to win here, it would be quite a blow to the establishment, and particularly to the Democratic Party, as well as potentially the Republican Party. Many Republicans in our district, and there's few of them, they're very excited about supporting us because we actually support a lot of policies that sometimes they find favorable, like lowering taxes, making sure that veterans and troops are well cared for. And oftentimes, supporting our troops means bringing them home, and increasingly, even GOP voters are saying that. So it's very interesting to watch. So it's a winnable campaign. We have the lowest turnout in all of California, maybe in the entire country. So that means that any small donation actually goes a long way. My opponent essentially does not have a campaign. She has not had a campaign in a long time. And she probably thinks that, that we are not organized, and maybe eventually she'll watch this video and figure out otherwise. But, so it's a winnable campaign. I encourage everyone, please, if, $20 pays for 2 yard signs, and that helps out a lot.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Rodolfo. Good luck to both of you. One more time, the dates for the event. So
the LA Harbor Peace Week is Wednesday, August 29th, with the art build and the open mic through Thursday and Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the way to Labor Day. And so it's Wednesday, August 29th through Labor Day, September 3rd. And check out our Facebook page, LA Harbor Peace Week 2018. And come on out. And on the flyer also is my my phone number and email. So
excellent. And then Rodolfo, when do we vote? What's election date?
So we vote on November 6th. So please, everyone, vote for change, vote progressive, vote left, and please support our campaign and come out to the events that we'll be having, and Rachel's helping to put on just a few miles south of our district.
And you have a speaking role at Rachel's event, and we'll keep people posted on when that is and when they can see you.
Great.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
All right. Bye-bye.
See you soon, Rodolfo.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.